Good afternoon. I just want to hop on here and talk about some things that are coming across my desk and it's things to kind of look out for. And so, if you can give me just 1 second so I can kind of share the stream, I hope you guys are doing good. Just kind of been busy on my end and I haven't been doing any videos. And so, I'm kind of getting into things and let's kind of talk about where we're at and what we can do. And I'm going to put this in my group. Give me 1 second, please. And there we go. So as soon as that shares, perfect. So I just wanted to kind of touch base about some news that I saw this morning. So I've been kind of doing some research to kind of figure out kind of the best course of action. And so, if you guys can see this, please let me know. Hey, General, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. So we have some good things that are going on, and so obviously this is still the beginning phases of this, and so I want to be very clear there. There's a lot of work to do. But there was a gentleman out of Southern Oregon that actually filed a recall against Oregon Governor Tina Kotek, and which I think is huge for us as gun owners. And this is something where we always talk about in the Facebook group. We're fighting forward. This is something that we can all get behind, and this is something that can bring us all together and give us a task, right? And point us in a direction that we need to go. Obviously, this is still the beginning phases of the recall. And so this is obviously the way the recall process works here in Oregon is obviously a person institutes the recall, then they have to gather a certain amount of signatures. Those signatures have to be verified, make sure they're actual Oregon citizens and residents, and actual voters. Once it's certified as a recall, then we can all as a collective go out and help them. We can gather signatures, we can print out the signature sheets at home. We can submit them online that way. So this is kind of like the opening salvo of this, and I feel that this is a really good thing for us as Oregonians. Is this something we can all get behind? And because there's a lot of bad policy that comes out of Salem, that's tied to her, right? And a lot of her bad policies that put us in a position where we're at today as gun owners, right? And we have to look at. She used to be the speaker of the House, right? So she has been instrumental in some of the bad gun laws that have been coming up the past couple years, probably within the last decade. And so she's been part of that. And so I think this would give us a set a good precedent and give us a good thing for us to focus on and get and be a part of. And so that's kind of what I want to bring it to your attention is obviously there's been a recall. It's the beginning phase of this. As we get more information about the process, we'll figure out kind of how we can get involved and get you guys involved. And I think the benefit of this is everybody's going to have the opportunity to make a change here in Oregon, and it's going to take all of us coming together. And obviously, this is not a left versus right issue. This is, basically a good policy versus bad policy, and this is something that unites all of us as Oregonians. Is obviously the focus. I primarily focus on is the gun rights stuff, and so I think in this situation where if we can rally other parts of the state where she's unpopular, it could have been water rights, it could be parental rights, all these different, facets of people and voters in Oregon. This will give us the opportunity to kind of weaponize that against her and get her removed from office. And part of this is we have to know as Oregon gun owners that every vote matters. Okay. So I know there's a lot of you that feel that your vote doesn't matter, but I feel that if we just stay home and don't do anything, we don't help out, we're never going to get the results that we need. And so we have to make sure that we are part of this process, is we get involved and we push back on this stuff and hopefully move the needle in a way like to the middle, right? Where we can have some kind of common sense things that are affecting us, not their idea of common sense, which is never common and there's no sense involved. Typically involves higher taxes and infringement on our freedoms. So I feel that, this is a good time for us. I mean, a lot of us are sick and tired of this, right? We had a very contentious legislative session. We got stuck with Senate Bill 243, which she just signed into law the other day. So now, obviously we had 91 days from the end of Senate sign die. And so this is probably going to go into effect at the end of September. That's what we're thinking if we're doing the math correctly. And so obviously that talks about the rapid fire devices, that talks about restriction on concealed carry with lawful citizens in public buildings. They can create their own rules. It's a mess. There's also a Measure 114 component that's not going to go into effect until March of next year. That's pending the outcome of what happens in the state Supreme Court. And so there's a lot of things that kind of are part of that bill. And it's a bad bill. It's not going to do anything to solve the problems that we face. It's not going to save lives. All it's going to do is create a felony for you having something that you could legally buy today under state and federal law. And there's no way for you to get rid of that, right? And so, I'm talking about the rapid fire devices like a force reset trigger, a bump stock, anything like that. The other part is it makes the criminal penalties for the reciprocity part. So if you're carrying a gun into a public space and there's a sign that says guns are not welcome here, there's going to be some criminal penalties there, which is bad because ultimately the law-abiding citizens that are not the ones committing these crimes, we're the ones, and that's the one thing that they really did not answer when we're doing all of our testimony up there, is they could not point to one case where it was a bad person or a good person with a gun that did a bad thing. Okay. And so that's what's like, I would be excited to be a part of helping, stop this stuff and get her recalled. And so, that's where we're going to, we have to work together. Right. And if we look back at, what happened with the recall effort for Governor Kate Brown, so there was two separate recalls, okay? And so in this situation, we have one recall for Kotek. That is the one that we support, okay? We cannot have the egos get involved. We cannot have the Monday morning quarterback say, hey, we're going to take up the cause of recall to help our political careers, because that's how we're going to fail. There has to be one recall that we all get behind. You'll see links that people are kind of submitting for change.org. That has no bearing on any official recall. That is you giving your money away. That's you giving your email address out. It's a way to data mine you. And so that's where, be very, very careful right now. Obviously, when there's some places that you can trust. I try to be one of those, and so I want to steer you in the right direction. Okay, so we're not spending a lot of time where we're not being effective with these tactics, and I want to be efficient with what we're doing as well. So as soon as we get the official word that this is an actual recall, we're still in the beginning stages. That's when we'll start saying, okay, now we can start gathering signatures and we can start organizing and doing stuff like that. And so, but we're at stage one. Okay, so just be aware it's coming. And that's I think it's going to be a good thing for us. And so I got a question in the chat. Let's show it here. So no, so we're talking about a couple different mag bands. Okay. So there's one out of California. Obviously the one that I'm speaking in regards to is Measure 114. And that's going to be the Oregon State Supreme Court. We have obviously our attorney, Tony Aiello, is getting ready to file his brief. I believe his brief is going to be due by 7/31. Okay. So once he files his response, to the the state of Oregon, right, the DOJ. So that information is going to go to the Oregon State Supreme Court. The oral arguments are going to be set for November 6th, and he's going to be up there. I believe he's going to get 15 minutes to a half hour to argue the merits of our case there in front of the Oregon State Supreme Court. They're going to get the same, and it's kind of it's a back and forth type situation. And I feel that he has a really good grasp of the concept of what we're trying to accomplish here. And obviously we're putting all of our hope and our faith in him. And so, but that's where we're at. So Measure 114, there's going to be no changes to Measure 114 currently. The only change would be is after they rule on November 6th. And so everything's good. The status quo is, where we're at right now. So just be aware of that. There is talks with, the Senate Bill 243. There isn't an effective date of March 15th of 2026. That is if we lose our appeal at the Oregon State Supreme Court. So let's play a hypothetical worst case scenario here. If we were to lose our appeal, right, at the Oregon State Supreme Court, which I'm not saying is going to happen, I'm just saying hypothetically, that's where we're going to get our opportunity to have our voices be heard and hopefully stop the stuff. And if we lose at the Oregon State Supreme Court, that's when there's an effective date for Senate Bill 243 for the magazine capacity restriction part, which is March 15th of 2026. So just something to think about there. So we have time. We have some things that are working in our favor, and so that's I'm going to stay focused and stay positive, and I hope you guys can too. Let me see this. That's a tough question. Obviously, what I believe in. Okay, so the two things that I believe in this situation is I believe in our attorney Tony Aiello. I believe in the ruling out of Harney County. Okay, those two working together. Okay, because that's what the Oregon State Supreme Court's going to be ruling on, and so that's where I'm cautiously optimistic. There is the ruling out of Harney County, which is really the framework that gave us this injunction, this permanent injunction that we're currently under. I feel that is really our best bet. Obviously, the cards are stacked against us with the Oregon State Supreme Court because most of those judges have been appointed by Governor Brown and others. So we do have a couple different options. Okay, so obviously we have the state trial. That's what I primarily focus on, which is we're talking about Measure 114 that comes out of Harney County. We do have the federal case that's going to be out of the Ninth District. They have not had a schedule put out yet of when that's going to be heard. And so obviously we lost the federal level case, right? And so it's supposed to go to the Ninth District. And depending on what happens in the Ninth District is whether it'll go to the actual federal Supreme Court. And so it could take years, so that's something that we do have kind of in our back pocket. And so we're hoping that if we can get this solved in the state case, that would be a really good thing for all of us, because then none of us would be potentially criminals, save us a lot of money that way as well. And so, I'm optimistic. Okay, I'm gonna keep my head up. I'm gonna keep my powder dry, and I'm just gonna focus on what I can control. And what I can control is obviously my daily actions and how I can get involved in other parts of this. But that's a really good question. I appreciate that. And so, worst case scenario, we lose in the state court. We still have the federal trial that is active. I just haven't seen any updates as of late on that one, so I really don't comment too much. I focus kind of on the fire that's kind of smoldering, which is the one in the state case, and then obviously as I hear more, I put out more information when it comes to the federal trial. But there is a couple options for us, so I just want to get on here and give you guys kind of an update. I hope you guys are doing well. I think that there's things that we can focus on going forward and fighting forward, and that's with that recall. And the recall would be a huge thing for us because it would obviously would send a message. Okay, a lot of these politicians that I dealt with up there in Salem during this legislative session is they feel that they're untouchable. And I feel that if we are to plant that flag, start a recall, start gathering support for the recall, start actually posting on social media, like having events and doing all these different things for the recall, I think that's what's going to wake people up. It's going to give people hope. It's going to get people involved, and everybody has the opportunity to be a part of this. And so, I have no affiliation. I'm just trying to bring you guys the information and to kind of talk about things. But I'm definitely going to do whatever I can to help. and obviously I'll use my platforms and help educate. There's a lot of people that don't understand, how they get involved. And so that's where I want to offer, educational videos and stuff like that. And so I hope that helps people. I mean, the whole point is I want to give people a task. I want people to feel that they're not out of this fight. There's things that we can still do together. And that's how we're going to stop this stuff is we got to fight forward. We got to fight together. We got to also make sure that we support the right recall. We shouldn't have more than one recall at one time going after the governor. That's not going to be productive. And so, yeah, David, I completely understand. And I completely understand. I know she's probably one of the most unpopular governors in the country. I mean, besides Newsom. And so I feel that the momentum and everything she's doing, right? So everything they did with ODOT and they're going to be raising taxes, believe it or not. There's a special session that's going to be on, I believe it starts on August 27th, or it's the end of August, where they're going to try to bring in, a tax increase to basically where they left off at the end of the Sinai. My concern is how they might toss in some guns in there. They could do that. There's some gun bills that technically would still be active in committees. Obviously this is hypothetical. Nobody's going to know until the special session, but just something to be aware of. That they could. And I'm just saying that just because I don't want people to feel that we're totally safe, because we're not totally safe. Whenever the session is, and whenever the legislature is up in that building, is when we are at risk. And that's where, people got to take the day off. If we need to have people there, we need people to kind of, to be a voice and be in there and understand, this is kind of where we're at and what it looks like. So, I'll know more as we get closer to the session. I've talked to different, reps and senators kind of preparing for this. And they said that, basically the gun bills are still on the table. They're not thinking that they're going to go after the gun bills. And so, that's kind of where we're at. And so, let me touch on this one. So hey, Lucas, thanks for tuning in. So, no, this is a recall of Governor Tina Kotek, and so it's in the beginning stages of this. There's been no changes on guns or silencers or suppressors at this point. We saw the guy Chris Murphy put out something where he's trying to put like a $4,700 tax. That's him just trying to pander to his base. That's going to go nowhere. And so, we're in a good spot. I mean, that bill BBB, the big beautiful bill, was already signed into law. It's going to go into effect at the beginning of next year, and that's when there's going to be changes to the NFA. Excuse me. From what I'm seeing, Gun Owners of America is trying to modify and actually throw out the NFA, which would be huge for us. And excuse me. And so I would recommend is following GOA for that. But that's a good thing. I've been following that closely. I just haven't really commented on it. I focus more on the state stuff here, and leave the federal stuff to other people that are kind of more versed on it. I try to speak. I speak from a position of experience. I spent a lot of time this session and the last couple of years up there in the Oregon State Legislature, and so I built relationships up there. So I know what information I can trust, so I can put it out to you guys, so you guys can be part of this. And the next step is we're gonna try to recall the governor. And it's going to take a lot of us working together, and it's going to take us kind of working together and bridging our platforms and volunteering our time and just doing what's right for the state of Oregon. We've got to send a message. We've got to say no more. We also have to show up and vote. We also have to have good candidates run for office. I did get a phone call from a guy that's running in out of the District 11, and so that's something to think about. There's guys that are stepping up and gals that are stepping up. So I appreciate it. Once we know more about them and their agendas and policies, we'll kind of help them. And I feel that anybody that's going to be a pro gun is going to have a good opportunity up there. So it's just, yeah, that's the one thing we have an issue here is if the NFA. I mean, that's just going to be another lawsuit, right? And so I guess the good thing to think about this G23 is and this is to my understanding, is if they pull out the NFA, right? And so they pull out the NFA, there's about 16 or 17 states that this would affect, right? And so those items, obviously if they're already registered with the feds, we're not going to have an issue, but it'd be us if we're going to buy any new ones going forward. That's to my understanding. So I mean, obviously take it with a grain of salt. But this is going to fast track this to go to the Supreme Court, and so this would be a good thing for us. And so yeah, it's a process. Everything's a process. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just want to give you guys that update. Kevin, I appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, thanks for following along. I appreciate it. Thanks for the subs. If you guys, like, comments, share. That's how this message gets out to more people. Obviously, I'm trying to grow my audience on YouTube, and I do a lot on Facebook. I do a lot on my other channel on Facebook and YouTube. But this is for advocacy, and yes, that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping for is to have all of those records, obviously the form fours, the form ones, all those things being just destroyed. That's what we need, and that would be a huge victory if we can get that. I mean, in reality, they know they're here, they know where they're at, but we just don't need the record. Okay, like, we're not the ones committing these crimes. We look at people with suppressors. I mean, it's used in such a small amount of crimes. It's not even probably measurable. And so we're not the problem here. We just want to be left alone. I don't know about you. I just want to be left alone. I want to be able to do what I want to do within reason and carry a gun, protect myself, my family, the people around me. We're not the problems. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing. So I would put out a request to you guys in the audience that are watching this. Is there something that you want to learn about? Like, what I've been kind of toying with is, because I kind of took a little break because I've been just overloaded with my other work that I'm doing. Is there things that you would like to learn as an Oregon gun owner? It could be, how we navigate OLIS, how we write testimony, how we testify in person, all these different things that make us better advocates. Is there things that you guys would like to learn about? And I'd like to, yeah, 100% Lucas, and you got it. And so what I want to do is I want to use this platform to kind of empower you guys and make sure you guys are understanding that this is how we do it, this is why we do it, and this is when to do it, right? And to kind of weaponize the audience, right, in a way that we're going to be fighting forward, right? We're going to fight. When I talk about fighting forward, and this is my view of fighting forward, is I want to go on the offensive. I want to write legislation. I want to either do a recall. I want to either help support local candidates that are running. So these are all things that if I can improve the layout or improve my fighting position, quote unquote fighting position up there in Salem, it's either through a recall, a change of leadership up there, all these different things. That's something that's on the offensive. That's something that changes the numbers. That is going to help us going into the future. And so, yeah. So this is, yeah, 100%. And what I do a lot about gun laws. The thing is, I'm not an attorney, right? I just play one here on YouTube and Facebook. So there's a lot of people that I do trust. When I'm speaking laws, I speak in a position where I have pretty good understanding and grasp of what it looks like and how it can affect me. And I speak kind of like in a layman's term to break it down for people that might not necessarily understand what these terms mean, right? And so my blue collar background kind of helps me relate that information in a way where people understand, right? And the whole point is to make sure that if I understand what this means and I see that like through a post or in the paper, I can automatically know how I can respond and how I can help that. And so that's where the gun laws, they're constantly changing. Obviously there's attorneys that I do recommend And so if there's anything that's truly technical, I do reach out to them like, hey, and kind of bounce my ideas off of them before I put it out. So for the most part, everything I try to put out is pretty vetted. And you guys obviously but obviously it's your responsibility to know these laws. And so I can show you how to decipher these laws. And like when we're talking about 243, I could do other videos where I can kind of show you where these changes are, where you can find them in statute. Like I can do all that really, really easy. And so if that's something that would interest you, I could definitely help you with that for sure. So, but ultimately, it's your responsibility to know these laws. Everybody that's carrying a gun, so that's the challenge. They want us to get tripped up. So, 100% Lucas. So I think the biggest thing is just getting involved, right? So knowing how to engage with your friends, right? To get your people to the ballot boxes, I think is really, really important. Educating your friends about, safety, right? Educating your kids or your friends about, potential changes in law. I think these are all valid points that you can do right now to help, and what it does is it gets your foot in the door, right? It gets you the chops that you need to kind of get where I am today. I started from a violent encounter back in 2013 where, a gun was used to save my life. And um, I've used that to kind of build a following, a voice, just because I know what it's like to be put on the ground, be unarmed and be saved with a gun, right? And that's what kind of started me to where I am today. I've learned a lot from this, and so I think that there's a lot that I'm still learning, and I'm kind of like learning with you, right? But I've come a long way, and so that's where I would just kind of make sure that you're just stay up to date. Follow this channel. If you're on Facebook, you can join our Facebook group, Oregon Firearms Advocates group. That's a good group, and that's where a lot of this information goes, and better information because I can get it to them faster. But just get involved. I'm glad to see you that you want to get involved. That's really, really important, right? Is we need your demographic, your age group. We need them to vote. We need them to buy guns. We need them to train. We need them to be advocates for all of us, right? So that's really, really important. So that's something I think about right there. And so I just gonna just put it out there, and there's always things that we can learn. So I'm probably gonna wrap this thing up, and absolutely 100%, Michael. I've been using a lot of AI. AI is, if you guys are not on AI yet, you guys should figure that out. It is a game changer, and so I use it for, calls to action, press releases. I use it for all sorts of different things. It's a great tool, and the AI that I use ChatGTP. I've trained it, and so it knows me. I'm not going to get any of this anti-gun slant because I've just been using it so long. I put in what I wanted to say, and it gives me the output that I need. So super great. Discord I'm kind of new to and I don't use too much. And um, I like this one. Okay, let's talk about this one. Okay, so 3075. 3075 did have a carve out for concealed carriers. Okay. There was part of that said that if we had a valid CHL, we would not have to have a permit to purchase. Okay. So I see that. That's 100%. It's already been proposed. It was already part of 3075. The issue that I have with this is, like, and I'm kind of, they back me they put baby in a corner, and I would look at this as a compromise. Okay. And they've so horribly mismanaged measure 114, 3075, 3076. I would, I would say no. Okay. I'm going to say no more compromises. Okay. I've already had enough compromises. And so while I respect the comment and I appreciate it, I feel at this point we're better off saying no more. Okay. The reason I say that, and this is obviously we're going to have our day in court, obviously, with Measure 114 and the state court. The reason I'm saying this is this is still a capitulation, right? This is not us having a right restored. Okay, so this is where I like the question, but from my perspective, like this is me surrendering. This is me accepting that what they did with Measure 114 was acceptable, and I'm not okay because they didn't prove that the voter rolls were clean, right? We lost by less than 1%. There was no recount. So that's where I'm saying no. I feel that I'm not going to give them that win. Okay, because when I say yes, it's okay with the CHL to buy a firearm, then I'm accepting the fact that everything that they put us through since 2022 is okay because we're basically co-signing just so we can go buy a gun. And I would rather either we repeal it altogether, right? We can do that through a referendum, a ballot referendum, right? Which we could totally be doing that right now. If this thing goes into effect, that's the one thing that we should be doing is we should be following a referendum and get it back on the ballot and then get it removed by us showing up and making sure that we beat them at the ballot box like they beat us. Until then, I'm not gonna say. I mean, it's tough. It really is. I'm going to say at this point, no more infringements. I want a right back. I want something restored. It's got to be give and take, right? We have to have give and take. The problem we have currently in Oregon is every piece of legislation is us giving up more. Okay, so I want something back. Okay, that's where I would say there. And while I appreciate this, like that's just my view. If I'm if you guys don't feel the way, please let me know. General, I'm going to put you to work. I love that. So let's figure out either send me an email or because I really need your help with Discord. I need to figure that platform out. So please let me know. My email address is on my channel or you can find me on Facebook. And so something to think about. Yeah, I see that. So we did just get a big win the other day when they changed a policy because of just the sheer outpouring of opposition. So that was a good thing. So I mean, the people that are paying attention right now is we are winning. Okay, so they are paying attention. They know we are unhappy. We know they know. Okay, so we have to turn this into action. And so that's where I'm talking where we have to fight forward, and so that's kind of where I'm at. So don't illegal fireworks. Yeah, it's where I'm from. There's illegal fireworks. I can't even like it's a mess. People light off fireworks. It's a celebration of our founding of our country, and they make it illegal, and it's wild. And people still do it. I love it. So keep doing it. Okay. Don't try it on me. Okay. Yeah. Send me an email, please, General. I appreciate you. Um, yeah. Inner tubes are done. We won there, and um, like, see, these are good ideas, right? So this is you, Chris, like thinking about things that would be you fighting forward, right? And so obviously that would be a really good thing. This is something that we should be talking about um, is we should be talking about ways to introduce. And I've got some bills that I've kind of like they're in like draft form that I've been kind of working on. One would be something along constitutional carry lines. Another one is a school safety bill, which I've actually got two school safety bills that I have. One would be gun safety in the schools. Another one would be security for our schools. Like those are I have them. They're in draft. I've just kind of like when I have some free time, I start kind of tweaking on them so I can have them prepared for the next session. And so that's another thing I could teach you guys how to introduce legislation. Right. This is all something that I've learned And I've done it before, and it's something that you guys can do really easily, especially if you have a good representative or senator. Like if you live in a district of a red district, it's really easy for you to draft a piece of legislation, send it to your rep, and have them introduce it on your behalf. And I can show you how to do that. That's pretty easy. So I don't want to take too much of your time. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been been busy. Um, yeah, it's just never ending, never ending. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for your trust. Thanks for following along. Thanks for the likes, the subs. Um, yeah. Um, I feel. I think, like, I like the sentiment. Like, I like the idea of a greater Idaho. I feel that Oregon's never going to give up that tax revenue, and so they're going to fight it. I feel our best bet would to be to get good people to run to change the layout of our legislature. I think that would be something that would probably be you look at like representatives run every 2 years, senators run every 4 years, right? So we're coming up on 2026. A lot of representatives are going to be out. Okay, so having people to step in, that's going to be critical, and that's something that in a short period of time, if we do it correctly, it would have a greater impact than the greater Idaho, because I don't think they're going to give that up. I don't think that they would allow that to happen. They want, but the problem with that is the people in Eastern Oregon don't have a voice, So that's where we have to get more people involved. It's a mess. So it really is. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm gonna get off here. I think I flapped a little too long today, but I appreciate the comments. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like, comment, share. That's how this message gets out. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably reintroduce this video later on, just so people that weren't here watching it live, they can kind of see it, and kind of see kind of where we're at, and what we're gonna do. Just remember, we have a recall that started. As soon as I hear more, I'll let you guys know so you guys can get involved, and we're just gonna just keep moving forward. That's what we're gonna do. And so let's I'll talk to you guys soon, and you guys have a great day. Thanks.